Hi, how are you? Here's the letter Vav. Vav. In Hebrew, the word for rose is vered. That starts with Vav. Vered. I want to read you a story about the letter Vav from this lovely book by Deborah Pessin. One day, the letters of the Hebrew alphabet were just hanging out together, talking about themselves. And the letter Vav said, "My name means hook." And in Hebrew, if you want to say hook, you say Vav. Hooks, Vavim, are very useful. You can hang your coat on them. They can help you hang other things that you need in your house. They're very useful. Did you know, said the letter Vav, that my cousin Vav, the hook, once saved the Jews? All the other letters stared back at him. Moses saved the Jews. Well, my cousin helped Moses, said the letter Vav. And Vav told the story of how his cousin, the hook, Vav, helped to save the Jewish people. The Jews were slaves in Egypt for many years. They made bricks in the hot sun and built castles and monuments. And the harder they worked, the meaner was Pharaoh. At last Moses came to free his people. He brought swarms of grasshoppers and frogs and toads. He made it pitch black so that people couldn't see each other. They stumbled all over each other. Pharaoh couldn't take it anymore, so he told Moses to take the Jewish people out of Egypt. Well, the Jews didn't get far when Pharaoh changed his mind. He decided to bring them back to build more pyramids and palaces and monuments. So Pharaoh climbed into his trumpet. He didn't climb in his trumpet. He climbed into his chariot and blew his trumpet. His soldiers came running. They got on their horses and they rode away. Pharaoh rode in his own personal chariot, which is a small wagon with two wheels. He stood in it and he drove two horses. All his officers rode behind him, generals, colonels, majors, captains, first lieutenants, second lieutenants. They all rode in chariots, and the rest of the army rode horses. The Jewish people didn't have chariots or horses. They were walking. Pharaoh's army was a lot faster than them, and soon he could see the Jewish people ahead of him. "Faster!" he shouted to the generals. "Faster!" said the generals to the officers. "Faster!" the officers said to the rest of the army. And they all went faster. Pharaoh made them go as fast as they could, and they were getting closer and closer to the Jewish people who were marching towards the Red Sea. Well, Pharaoh made his horses go faster and faster and faster. They came up the hill, and up this hill, Pharaoh's horses galloped. Up, up, up they went, and when they got to the top of the hill, the letter Vav stopped, and all the other letters said, "What happened?" On top of the hill, there was a big rock. And Pharaoh's chariot bumped into the rock, and then out fell my cousin, the hook. So here's the wheel, and here's where Vav was. He was keeping the wheel attached to the rest of the wagon. When he fell out, the wheel had nothing attaching it to the wagon, so the wheel fell over, and the wagon fell over, and Pharaoh fell over. He rolled down the hill to the bottom of the hill, and there he was. The generals and the colonels and the majors and the captains and the first lieutenants and the second lieutenants jumped out of their chariots. They ran down the hill to pick him up. Pharaoh was lying in a ditch with dirt all over his face. They picked him up carefully and carried him to the top of the hill. They set him down on the ground. They fussed over him for a long time. The army doctor came and examined him for injuries. Pharaoh was covered with bruises and bumps. He had a terrible headache. The doctor advised him to just go home and rest. In the meantime, the Jewish people got to the Red Sea. So by the time Pharaoh caught up with them, they were safe. And all because of my cousin Vav, the hook. And all the letters agreed that had it not been for Vav's cousin, Jewish people would still be slaves in Egypt today. That's historical fiction. Bye.